Bitcoin is going to billions of US dollars per coin. Not for some time probably, but one way or another, Bitcoin will be trading most certainly for billions of US dollars at some point in the future. I want to explain why, because that's a bold claim. And to most people, that sounds absolutely preposterous. But in order to understand why it's not nearly as preposterous and absurd as it may sound at first, we have to be thinking about the world in terms of energy. See, I'm out on this beautiful morning walk here in this lovely little field of ivy, and I'm thinking about energy again, of course. And as thinking about that, you know, like if we look at all these trees, what do? They eat sunlight, they soak up all the sunlight, they bring energy down from the sky, they bring all this nutrition down into the ground, and they grow, they get bigger, they get stronger, they age older, and we have all these birds and woodpeckers and squirrels around, and using this energy and using similar forms of energy, either via carnivores that eat other animals, or as herbivores eat plants. One way or the other, they are either eating something that eats sunlight, or eating something that eats sunlight. One way or another, everything that lives, every organism, from you and me to every amoeba, to the largest creatures that have ever walked the earth, all of these things need energy to survive. They need energy to thrive. And how do humans do this? Humans, we save energy and we store it up for the future. Okay? Again, if we look around and we take these creatures, let's look at trees. What do trees do? They take energy and then they store it in their bodies. They store it in their trunks, in their branches, in their leaves, in their roots, and they expand them and they grow them. They invest in their root system. They invest in their branches. They invest in the next years of growth for the sake next year of hopefully gaining more energy than they did this year. Or let's take those squirrels as an example. These all are acorns here. And what squirrels do is they take these acorns and they bury them in the ground to find them later, okay? These acorns are the squirrels' method of saving energy, saving their purchasing power, quote unquote, into the future. They are using these little things as mechanisms in order for preserving their, quote unquote, squirrel economic value into the future. And so these acorns are much like what we humans do with money. We take energy, a certain amount of energy, and we store it for the future. Now, what do we do that in right now? Well, we do it in things that are scarce, kind of like acorns. We take houses, we take gold, we take real estate, we take other things. We take them because there's only a certain amount of them, and all squirrels are going to want them, and we bury it somewhere that's hidden, somewhere that we're going to be able to keep safe for the long-term future. And so then in the future, when we bury up our acorn, we have faith and trust that that acorn is, number one, going to be there, and number two, that squirrels will desire and demand and pay a price for that acorn. And so right now, our main form of a savings vehicle is our house, or is our corporate valuations in our paper stock, or it's bonds and government debt. You know, those are all of our versions of acorns. And so where does Bitcoin come in with that? Bitcoin comes in and is trying to be the superior acorn. It is trying to be the superior organism. In this world of different organisms, of different kinds of organisms, different species, different families, different strategies, Bitcoin's trying to be the apex predator. Now, why does it have the potential of being the apex predator, quote unquote, in this worldview? The reason is because, let's say we have this world of little squirrels that are trying to save energy and store their value into the future. Well, if there was a seat, let's say that the quality and the value and the nutrition of these acorns could be determined by a single chair. There was a little chair somewhere here in the woods where if you are a squirrel and you sit in that chair, you control the quality of these acorns. My argument would be personally that if that chair existed, which sounds kind of made up if you're in the real world, but let's say that chair existed, it is 100% certainty that squirrels would 100% of the time fill that chair. Because if you sit in that chair, you control the entire society. You control every incentive, every facet of that world, just by sitting in that chair and making a few tweaks, making a few adjustments. That would be my argument. And I would say it's the same thing with humans. Now, we actually have that. Why? Because Fiat is a made-up world. See, in the real world, if I say, there's a place where you can sit and control all the acorns. It sounds made up and absurd. But when you added magic internet money, when you added magic political currency paper units into thin air, when you manifest them in this abstract concept we call money, all of a sudden there is that chair. We call it the central bank. We used to call it a king or a monarch or a dictator. But now we have a central bank which is a little more decentralized than a king, but ultimately it's the same end result. You have this chair, in which if you sit in that chair, you have the ability to control the money, okay? And again, if you can control the acorns, if you can control the way and the means that an organism stores its energy, you can control not just one of these organisms, you can control all of the organisms within that society. You can predict the complex emergent behavior of all the squirrels in the forest. If you can simply debase or determine the value of an acorn in a given year, okay, I'm going to debase this acorn by 2% a year, I have just turned all the squirrels into my servants, into benefiting me at their own future expense. And that is the problem with political currency. I make it clear, the problem is not, oh, the politicians are bad and we have to reset the politicians. The problem is not, oh, we have a bad president or a bad Federal Reserve chairman or we have a bad Treasury secretary. Oh, we just have to replace them all and get a bunch of Bitcoiners. No, that's not the solution. You don't fix squirrel problems by filling the chair with new squirrels. You have to remove that chair entirely to where no one is in control of the acorns. And for that you need some sort of unimaginable creature, some sort of giant apex predator of an asset and a money, something that is going to come in and absolutely change the game. Okay, see, if you're a squirrel, you have a squirrel brain. Your brain's probably the size of a walnut or whatever, and so you have a certain difficulty understanding certain things. You have a certain difficulty of envisioning the world beyond yourself. And so if you try to communicate to these squirrels that, hey, you know, your problem are not these squirrel politicians. All these squirrels are fighting against each other. You're killing each other. You're hurting each other. You don't understand that the problem, the central problem here with the debasement of your acorns year after year after year is the existence of this chair. And if you want to solve the problem, you have to remove the chair. They're not going to understand that. And likewise, while humans are a little more complex, we're no different at the end of the day. We have these real problems. They're not squirrel problems, they're human problems. We have this constant battle for the seat of power over political currency. We're giving more and more political energy, more and more of our economic resources, more and more of our savings to this power in order for the hope that we could gain something. And so, let's say we're in this beautiful woods for thousands of years. We've had nothing change. We've had all this political, monetary distortion. We've been competing with each other for the least bad acorn. That's where we are today. And then something walks through. The largest creature ever to walk the earth. Something walks through. We have a T-Rex walk through. Now all of a sudden, your little life as a squirrel just changed. See, when the T-Rex walks through, what happens is that now you have a new apex predator out there in the world. You don't anymore have the chair, this tiny little chair that's a squirrel. That chair is no longer relevant because now you have the apex predator walking in here, okay? If you are a squirrel, you have no chance against this. If you are a little squirrel politician coercing all the other squirrels to do it, you don't have a chance against this. People ask me all the time, will the government ban Bitcoin? Is the government going to come up to blah, 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 blah. It's like, unless you've looked at the skeleton of Bitcoin, unless you've taken the time and investigated Bitcoin and how it works and understood the technicals of what make it unique compared to all other assets in the human race up to this point, you simply don't see with your own eyes what I see. You don't see what we see of how much more massive, how much more strong, how much more powerful, how much better of an energy transfer of value over time and space this organism and this mechanism is than a little acorn or the little squirrel that connects acorn. This T-Rex here, or this sculpture of a T-Rex, this thing here channels energy, so much more energy, so much efficiently over such a farther distance than an acorn or a squirrel could ever hope to do. And if you think you can compare these things, you are not living in the real world. Have you seen this thing's claws? I mean, they're tiny, but compared to a squirrel, they're giant. And so what's my larger point here? What's my larger joke with this giant series of metallic bones behind me? The point is that Bitcoin is either what we claim it is, either what I say it is, or it's not. And that's all that matters. If it's not, then it's even more worthless than an acorn. It's like dust. It's like a rock here. Yeah, it's a thing, and yeah, you could trade it, but it has no value to you. So either Bitcoin is like this rock, more worthless than an acorn if you're a squirrel, or it's this Tyrannosaurus Rex. There's really very little room in the middle. If Bitcoin is just another mere political currency that could be made up at will, like these acorns or like these squirrels manage, then it's pointless. You've not solved the problem. Bitcoin has to be bigger and better and different in a way that we cannot conceive before. And that's my argument here, that Bitcoin is that. Now, why is it that? Again, there is no chair or someone to control the debasement or the supply or the manipulation of value of this currency. And therefore, it has benefits. It has the ability to channel energy in a way that no other thing has been able to do before in the human race. Now, my friend Peter Dunworth and I have talked extensively online about how Bitcoin's price in fiat terms is incredibly underappreciated and incredibly higher than where people's unit bias is right now. See, most people are thinking, oh, maybe Bitcoin someday will get to $100,000, maybe a couple $1 million. But my point is, and Peter Dunworth will make this point too, that Bitcoin should be billions of US dollars. Okay, not millions, not tens of millions, not hundreds of millions, but billions per coin. And that sounds crazy, and that sounds absurd, and I have to make these videos walking in the woods sounding like a madman, explaining to people why that's the case. But if you try to price the hunting power of apex predator in terms of acorns, is the exchange rate 100,000 acorns for that? Okay, what about rocks? Okay, that's an even better example, because all these acorns, because top squirrels debasing them every single year, these acorns eventually turn into these rocks. So forget the acorns. What is the purchasing power of being able to control a portion of that in terms of these rocks? Okay, this is a much better backing of energy for you than this is. And so we have to change our mindset when it comes to political currency in this regard. See, we are privileged, we are spoiled here to be living in the United States, or at least I am. I'm filming this here in the United States. What we have to keep in mind is that if I'm in the United States, I'm looking through the world, through the US dollar. And when that happens, when I look out at the rest of the world, if I am the top squirrel for right now, and I'm looking at the rest of the world, what I see is that all the other currencies of the world are going down. Okay, my dollar is staying constant. It's a straight line into the future, away from the present. And the Turkish lira is falling down, and the Australian peso is falling down, and the European euro is falling down. All these currencies are falling down and trending to zero against me, because my version of the acorn, my version of storing energy for the citizens of my political jurisdiction is superior to all those. And so if I'm within that political jurisdiction, if I'm within the United States, looking out through the lens of that means of communicating value, through the US dollar, what I see is every other currency falling down indefinitely to zero perpetually. 33 currencies have fallen 50% against the US dollar in the last 10 years. Let me say that again. 33 nations have had their local political currencies fall 50% against the US dollar in the last 10 years alone. Four of those 33 were G20 nations. Okay? And you have to keep in mind, the US dollar has also fallen at least 50% in the last 10 years. And you have to keep in mind that the US dollar and all these other currencies have higher sovereign debt levels than they've ever had before. They have higher total debt levels than they've ever had before. And many of them have worse demographics than they've had in over a century. The debasement and the dilution of all these versions of the acorns, the debasement and dilution of all these forms of political currency is going to trend down indefinitely. And simultaneously, in the middle of this woods where squirrels think everything is the same as it has been for thousands of years, going to continue to be the same in thousands of years, I am standing here warning you that this thing, this Tyrannosaurus Rex, this apex predator of an asset, has entered in, and it's a triple point asset. Okay, we have gold, we have derivatives, and we have fiat currency. Okay, Bitcoin is aiming to be a store of value and a medium of exchange and a unit of account. All three of these things simultaneously together. We have not had that before. Okay, you have fiat currency and you have gold. Gold is aiming to be a store of value. You have fiat currency. It's aiming to be a medium of exchange. Okay, these are two separate things with entirely different market caps, with entirely different values. And this asset, this T-Rex, is trying to price both of these things together in one thing, okay? It is like with the internet saying we are going to marry television and the newspaper into one online platform. You'd be like, okay, but nobody uses the internet. The internet's a scam. It's like, it's trying to marry all these different things, all these different technologies in one single asset, and you inherently cannot put a price on that in terms of the inferior system, in terms of the inferior asset, okay? And that's my warning to you today. Bitcoin is this kind of apex predator, and it is coming after the chair of these little squirrels where they're trying to save energy in the future with perpetually dying systems of saving energy. And that is the exciting thing, that ultimately, if this is the case, where Bitcoin is the apex predator, obviously this is where the metaphor breaks down, because the T-Rex is a carnivore, and that's not good for prey like squirrels that have no chance, but but that's the point. You know, my friend Peter Dunworth and I, we talk about people taking self-custody of their coins. We talk about people understanding to get off zero and get at least a little bit. And that's my encouragement to you today, okay? First, you have to understand, why do these proverbial acorns have value? And second, you need to store them properly, hide them in a good place somewhere where no one else is going to find them or take them from you. So that's my encouragement for you. Number one, understand that Bitcoin is this kind of apex predator. That if it is true, it is unlike anything we have seen before in our little world over the last few thousand years. It's nothing like we've seen in history. It's a triple point asset coming after all three of these things simultaneously. It's been around for 15 years. We have not seen a way to stop that. We don't know how to stop it. I don't know how to stop it. I have learned about this thing. I have seen the bones. I've looked at the skeleton. I've studied the anatomy of this thing for an incredibly long period of time, and so much of my intellectual capital and so much of my time to find out how could I kill it, how could I distort it, how can I manipulate it, and I still can't figure out the way. And so, because this is probably walking into our field, because this is probably walking into our arena here in an incredibly fast speed, faster than we can imagine, I would highly encourage you to get off zero and get some tiny little bit allocation to Bitcoin just in case we're right. Because as soon as that T-Rex enters our field, all the squirrels think I'm crazy now. All the squirrels think I'm absolutely insane. But when they see this thing walk into the light, it changes your mindset in the same way it's changed your mindset. So that's the first thing, is get a little bit just in case these crazy Bitcoiners are right about the size and the speed and the momentum of this thing. And then number two, store your acorns properly. Don't leave your acorns sitting out there on the top of the grass where someone else is going to take it. Don't leave your acorns on exchanges. Don't leave your Bitcoin with GBTC. Don't leave your Bitcoin and all these yield products and all these Bitcoin IOUs and all these places where people can just take it, or you're going to have rehypothecation risk, or people trying to make yield on it. No, get the real acorns, get them off the exchanges, put them underground in cold storage with single sig yourself, or if you want multi-sig, which is slightly more complicated but also has a great series of trade-offs in your advantage, if you want to learn how to do multi-sig, I can help you at the Bitcoin Advisor with my partner Peter Dunworth and the great team there. If you just click the link in the description, I'd be more than happy to book a consultation with you. It is no cost to you. We can answer any questions you want about setting up a Bitcoin multi-sig with self-custody. So that's my encouragement to you today. Don't become a dinosaur. Don't become outdated. Don't get left in the ancient world of the past. You don't want to be in the world of newspapers and Kodak when the internet is coming along. And likewise, you don't want to be in the world of 2030 or 2050 or 2080 without having any allocation to this world. Because this world is coming, and it's coming really quickly. So, I encourage you, consider buying some Bitcoin, and consider clicking the link in the description to take it off self-custody and have someone to handhold you through the process. Thanks.